The first time Daniel Carter saw Emma Reynolds crying, it was raining so hard outside the cafe that the windows looked like they were melting, and something inside him broke in the exact same way. He almost didn't recognize her at first, slumped in the corner booth with her coat still on, shoulders shaking as if she had finally run out of strength to hold herself together. Daniel stood frozen near the counter, a single dad who had learned to survive by moving fast and feeling little, suddenly pulled back into a world where other people's pain mattered again. He had no idea that the next few minutes would quietly redraw the rest of his life. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change everything, take a second right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Daniel's life had become a series of careful routines after his wife passed away 3 years earlier. He worked long hours as a project manager at a marketing firm, rushed home to make dinner, helped his 8-year-old son Noah with homework, and collapsed into bed exhausted but grateful that the day had ended without disaster. He was known at work as dependable and quiet, the kind of man who never complained and never stayed late for office gossip. Emma worked 2 floors below him in design, someone he had exchanged polite smiles with in elevators and quick nods in meetings, nothing more. She was known as bright and driven, always meeting deadlines, always composed. Seeing her like this, undone and alone, felt unreal, like stumbling onto a private moment that the universe hadn't meant to show him. He considered leaving. That had become his instinct over the years, to step away from anything that might demand more than he had to give. But then he noticed how empty the cafe was, how no one else seemed to see her, and how her hands trembled as she tried and failed to wipe her tears away. Daniel ordered his coffee and sat a few tables away, telling himself he would just wait, just make sure she was okay from a distance. Minutes passed, heavy and slow, and something in him finally gave. He moved closer, not as a coworker, not as a rescuer, but as someone who understood what it felt like to be drowning in plain sight. What he said to her wasn't dramatic or clever. It wasn't advice or a solution. It was a simple truth, shared without judgment, about loss, about carrying more than one person should have to carry alone, about how surviving doesn't always mean you're actually living. He didn't tell her what to do. He told her she wasn't broken for feeling the way she did. And in that quiet corner of the cafe, something shifted. Emma's crying softened, not because her problems vanished, but because for the first time in a long while, someone had seen her pain without trying to fix it or minimize it. Emma's story spilled out slowly over the next hour, not in words quoted here, but in the weight of her expression and the exhaustion in her posture. Her mother had been sick for years, and the responsibility had fallen almost entirely on her. Medical bills were piling up. Her engagement had recently ended after her fiancé decided he didn't want a life filled with hospitals and uncertainty, and the pressure of being strong at work had finally cracked her open. She had come to the cafe planning to cry for 10 minutes and then pull herself together, but grief doesn't follow schedules. Daniel listened the way only someone who has lost deeply can listen, without impatience, without trying to escape the discomfort. When they finally left, the rain had stopped, but neither of them felt the same as when they had walked in. They didn't make promises or dramatic declarations. They simply agreed in the quiet way adults do, to check in on each other. Back at work, something subtle changed. Lunch breaks overlapped. Emails became warmer. On especially hard days, they would sit in silence together, sharing the comfort of not being alone. Daniel found himself laughing again, small surprised laughs that felt like discovering a forgotten language. Emma found herself breathing easier, knowing someone else carried part of the weight, even if just emotionally. At home, Noah noticed the change before Daniel did. His father smiled more. The house felt lighter. When Emma eventually met Noah, it wasn't forced or awkward. She knelt to his level, asked about his favorite superhero, and listened as seriously as if he were discussing world politics. For a child who had watched his father shrink into himself after losing his mother, Emma's presence felt like warmth returning to a cold room. She didn't try to replace anyone. She simply added something new, Life, of course, didn't magically smooth out. Emma's mother's health declined before it improved. Daniel struggled with guilt, worrying that allowing happiness meant betraying his late wife's memory. There were misunderstandings, moments when both of them retreated into old habits of self-protection. But every time things felt like they might fall apart, they returned to that first moment in the cafe, to the understanding that pain shared doesn't disappear, but it becomes bearable. Months later, on another rainy afternoon, they returned to the same cafe, not because they needed to, but because they wanted to. They sat in the same corner, hands wrapped around warm mugs, watching the world rush by outside. Daniel realized that the thing that had changed both their lives forever wasn't just what he had said that day, but the fact that he had stayed. Emma realized that strength didn't mean never falling apart. It meant allowing yourself to be caught when you did. If this story is reaching you on a quiet night or a hard morning, and you feel even a small spark of hope, please like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to the channel to help us keep telling stories like this. Both of them moved forward not as people who had been saved, but as people who had learned how to save each other in small human ways. Daniel became a better father, more present, more open. Emma found balance, learning that her worth wasn't measured by how much she could endure alone. Their lives didn't become perfect, but they became real, full of texture and meaning again. Please comment below if you believe one moment of kindness can change a life forever. In the end, the cafe remained just a cafe, the rain just rain, but for two people who had been quietly breaking, it became the place where everything finally began.